David continues to do right by God, and still everything goes wrong. Welcome to The Warrior Bride. I'm Autumn Woods, and today we're covering our fifth and final wilderness survival tip from the story of David. And of course, we're going to do it on the gloomiest, rainiest day that we've had so far, because we're going to talk about hope.
She said to me, "Even now there is hope left, but I cannot see it. It is long since we had any hope."
David has learned to maintain his integrity in the face of opposition. Now he has to practice guarding his hope from an onslaught of devastation. After his last encounter with Saul, David and his men crossed into enemy territory and befriended Achish, king of Gath, Goliath's hometown. Achish gave David the town of Ziklag, the first permanent home the once and future king has known in a while. During this time, David served as a double agent. He did right by Achish, but he also used this time in Philistine territory to try and finish what God had commanded the Joshua generation to start. David and his mighty men conducted lethal commando raids on the nearby towns, eliminating the evil inhabitants God had commanded Israel to drive out before they took the promised land. He even went after the Amalekites, who Saul had spared against the Lord's orders. David paused the raids to go up to battle as Achish's ally. But the king promptly sent his friend home because all the other Philistine princes were too smart to have the giant killer in their ranks. So David and his men returned to Ziklag and were horrified at what they found. The Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. Proverbs 13:12 says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." David has been holding on to hope since the day he was first anointed king as a boy. Hope that God's promises would come true. Hope that he could draw closer to God. Hope that he could reconcile with Saul. Hope that he and his men could live safely. Even this little fig leaf of shelter has been shredded to pieces. David continues to do right by God, and still everything goes wrong. To make matters worse, David's men, who have been loyal to him through the good, the bad, and the ugly, are now plotting to stone him. It doesn't matter to them that he's also lost his family and all of his belongings too. No, they need someone to blame. They've lost all hope to the point where chasing down their real enemy isn't even an option. Satan is a hope thief. If faith is the substance of things hoped for, his intention is to damage your hope and cause you to compromise your faith in God, negatively affecting your life and the lives of those in your sphere. At this point, it would have been easy for David to despair of his life and apologetically offer his throat to his men. The enemy would have loved that. Unmake God's image, stop the messianic prophecy, stifle an opportunity for God's strength to be made perfect in weakness. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. David did not throw a pity party. He gave himself a moment to process the horrible things that were happening, and then he did what he'd been trained to do since childhood: throw the problem at God's feet. I'm not going to skip through this to make the video go faster. Choosing to strengthen yourself in the Lord is a rigorous, demanding mental and emotional obstacle course, even if you can run it prostrate on your living room floor. If you've ever been in a prolonged argument with me, you'll notice that it takes me a while to pry my eyes from the carpet and decide to get up and walk away. The process looks way simpler than it actually is, because it involves me making a series of decisions. I have to choose that I will not continue in this current line of thought. I will stop searching for blame or loopholes. I acknowledge that I've exhausted all my resources, and I will move from this spot, and in doing so, I'm signaling to you and the invisible audience in the spirit realm that I'm going to seek help from someone bigger than me. The only reason I can do that is that I can point to a lengthy list of precedents set by God. He's done it before, and he'll do it again. And if we've never been here together before, he's not afraid of doing new things. In Psalm 77, Asaph gives us a blueprint for what this giant process summed up by half a Bible verse really looks like. I cried out to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. Selah. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I meditate within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search. And I said, this is my anguish. But I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the peoples. You have, with your arm, redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph. Selah. Don't be afraid of that word Selah. It just means pause, breathe, and reflect. This is what David did in that tiny half verse. He acknowledged the overwhelming nature of his problem. He realized that only God was strong enough to handle it and make it right. He reminded himself of things God had done in their relationship. Then he encouraged himself with things God has done for others that are so monumental, even people who deny the Lord's existence know the stories. And he reasons, if God could do it then, he can do it now. David rises from the ashes and demands the ephod. The ephod was an apron-like garment worn by the high priest. It had a breastplate containing 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. It also had a pouch inside containing the Urim and Thummim, 2 stone lots through which God gave clear, decisive yes or no answers to his people. Usually, the priest would do the inquiring, but David had a personal relationship with God, and he needed to get the answers for himself. This is actually a beautiful moment of foreshadowing for the new covenant of Jesus' blood, under which we can come boldly before God, as we are also made priests by Jesus' authority. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them?" And he answered him, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all." Of the 600 men with him, 400 track the invaders with David, while 200 who are too heartsick to go on stay back and guard the supplies. Sure enough, David's army encounters an escaped slave of the Amalekites who leads them to the enemy's camp. When they get there, the Amalekites are having a party with all of their spoils, unaware that they're about to be ambushed. Then David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock, and said, "This is David's spoil." So, because David encouraged himself in the Lord and fanned the flames of his hope, he got direction from God, destroyed his adversaries, got back everyone and everything the enemy had stolen from him, plus bonus loot that the Amalekites had plundered from other people. Even though David says this is his spoil, he fully acknowledges that it came from God, who stores up the wealth of the wicked for the righteous. David shares it with the men who went to battle and the men who were too heartsick to go on and stayed with the supplies instead. Even though some of his evil men argued with him, David refused to punish anyone whose hope had been deferred. He knew too well what that felt like. Anyone who participated in the venture at all had a part in its success, and they needed the encouragement and blessing from it just as much, if not more, than the men who actually went to battle. God gave them this abundant provision for another reason too. David didn't know this, but Saul was about to die in battle, and David would need a calling card to remind his allies and the leaders of Israel that he was alive and anointed to be the next king. He sent presents of the spoil to his friends, to the elders of Judah, to anyone who had helped him while he was a wanted man. And shortly after this, another one of David's hopes came true, when the word of the Lord was fulfilled at Hebron, where he was anointed king of Judah, and later, king over all Israel. In the next video, we'll cover the story of Deborah and Jael, two women used mightily by God to free his people and subdue the enemies of the Lord. If you're finding value in this content, don't forget to like, sub, share, and hit the bell. New episodes drop Saturdays at 9 a.m. See you soon.